Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. Today we have a rock star guest lined up, and we're going to talk about scaling your business and when you should maybe bring in some help. How do you know it's time? And also, how do you make sure you scale the right way and you're identifying what you should be doing and what others should be doing in your business? So big conversation, short amount of time. Let's just dive right in. Welcome to my guest, Adriana Cowdin. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. This is my pleasure.
So I was reading your profile, and it says you are an executive coach. And when I hear that, and I think when a lot of people hear that, they're thinking, "Oh, this is not for me. She's for corporate America, right?" Like, but can you explain for me, like, who you work with and what really executive coach means?
Yeah. So I always like to kind of break that myth down first, because I've been an executive coach since the late 90s. So way before coaching was like a thing. And I did my coaching class at Harvard Business School. So very different than like an online coaching certificate. Not that those aren't great. When it comes to executive coaching, I think entrepreneurs are always like, I know this, I'm going at this on my own. But I'm a 4-time entrepreneur, right? So I have sat in that chair. I have had a business that failed, which is like the worst experience, but you learn a ton. And I've had a business that was really successful, and we scaled up to a top 1% woman-owned small business, and then I sold it. So I really understand that entrepreneurial connection because I sit in that chair. And then, having been a coach for 25 years, I started out in recruiting. And so I was actually giving a presentation on personal branding, and an entrepreneur came up to me and said, "Hey, can you help me redirect my business?" So I kind of come in when it's at an inflection point, like you're totally burned out and your life is out of balance, which for many of us entrepreneurs, it kind of stays that way. Or you can't get the team aligned to one single North Star. Like, how do we get them aligned? Or you figured out, I really want to scale. I want to go from 6 figures to 7, or 7 to 8, and what's standing in the way. So those points of inflection is when an executive coach is appropriate for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, those are such crucial moments too, because it's almost analysis paralysis sometimes, because you have to make a decision, but it's very hard to identify what that is, what's right. You have employees' lives at stake. There's a lot on the table, and I definitely want to dive into that, but I want to hear for you, 4-time entrepreneur, first of all, impressive. And you sold a business and you had a business fail. I think both are meaningful in their own ways, I'm sure, for you. I've been in the same boat, and I'm curious to hear, what are some of the stories from your inflection points? I mean, growing a business to a top 1% woman-owned business and selling it, that's a massive task. And I'm sure you had some of these. So what were they and how did you get past them?
Yeah. So first, the business that failed, it was too new. It was like too early in the business world for it, right? It was, if you would consider, what anyone knows what Bambi HR is, I was doing that in like 1999. So it was way too early, right? Not a bad idea, just not the right timing. And I was so stuck that like, this is a good business, this is going to work, and I just wouldn't give up. So I was as much of the problem and in the way as the fact that it just wasn't the right time. The business that was really successful, what I learned more than anything was, and I always go back to this, but Franklin Covey's begin with the end in mind, which probably ages me, but I knew where I wanted that business to go. And I never was attached to how I was going to get there. Like, we're going to get there one way or the other. I will say, though, one of the biggest lessons is one of the ways we scaled significantly was we landed just a behemoth of a client. And that, as you probably know, always has goods and bads, right? Like, that's a great thing. It allowed me to sell the business and scale it. But at the same time, so much of your revenue is tied to one client that it can be very scary. And so you kind of need to balance that out with both your team and your accounting, right? To make sure that you're forecasting appropriately so the business doesn't rely on this like single or two top clients.
Yeah, that's always one of those things where you're excited and it follows immediately by panic, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, 20% of our revenue from one client. This is scary, or more. I don't know what it was for you, but I'm just putting that out there. Yeah, that's always interesting. But okay, so let's go back to the inflection points. Let's go back to someone needs to make a decision. They need to grow. They need to pivot. They need to find a new path for their business, whatever it is. What is the first thing you're going to sit down and work out with them to start plotting that new path?
I always start with an exercise on goal clarity, because it's not just business goal clarity. It's let's get clear who you are as an individual and what your life goals are. And then let's wrap the business around that. So is your goal to retire in 5 years or to move out of the business? Is it to create a multi-generational legacy? Until you know where you're going, and that's different for everyone, we can't create a path to get there, right? So the first step is always goal clarity. And I often find it's so challenging with entrepreneurs because there's so many things that we're good at, right? Like it becomes this, to your point, analysis or paralysis of analysis. Like there's so many things, you become very indecisive. And what I always find is your board, if you have an advisory board or a board of directors, is really great. But again, they're really trained to go in one direction, which is scalability and profitability, right? Your family and friends, bless them, are like, you can do anything you want. You're great at everything. And as wonderful as that is, that's honestly not very helpful when you're trying to make really difficult decisions on next steps. And so that's when a coach who really understands the mindset of an entrepreneur can be so valuable, to come in that inflection point and say, let's first define what is your goal. Like, where are we trying to go as an individual and as a leader? And then let's create the path to get there. And how do you stay accountable? Because I would say that's the other thing as an entrepreneur. You're not really accountable to anyone other than yourself. And that can be good and that can be really difficult and challenging.
Which is ironic because that's why all of us start our businesses, right? Because I always say we want two things. We want some type of freedom. It's financial freedom or it's time freedom.
Yeah.
And we think just starting our own business is going to give us both of those. And surprise, it usually gives you neither of them.
Yeah.
For a couple of years until you do it the right way. But I'm curious because, I mean, what do you find is the biggest holdup when people are calling you in? Is it that analysis paralysis? Or is it some other factor? Because there are a number of fears that are present for people when growing their business. I mentioned before, you have employees who you have to pay. You have your own family who you have to help survive and put food on the table. What are the common fears that people are really stuck on that's preventing them from making a decision?
So it's interesting. Entrepreneurs kind of fall in three categories. So one is I'm having challenges with my leadership team. I don't know how to motivate them, and I can't grow the business until I get them aligned. So it's around the people. The second is around that burnout, right? Like my team's doing great, the business is doing great, but I can't continue at this 20-hour a day or whatever the crazy pace is, and or my family's going to leave me because they haven't seen me in 3 months, and we don't want that. And then the third is really that point of I'm trying to scale and I don't exactly know how to do it. And there's so many things under that, right? Like a lot of what I hear is all the business development comes from me as the entrepreneur. And so how do I scale if I'm just a business development person? Like, what do I do there? Another one becomes with, I don't understand processes and operations. I've never been in that realm. I'm an expert in A, B, or C. And so I don't know how to scale in that realm. So it really becomes that scale question. But what I like to say is it's always an inflection point. When you are stuck on a decision, that's when you need to work with an executive coach to say, how do I get from here to there?
Yeah, so I want to kind of, if we have time, I want to pick apart two of these that I see a lot. I'm sure you see a lot too. I'll just put this out there. If you need help with your ops and your systems, we're fractional COOs. Give us a call. You know where to find us. You're listening to this podcast. But the two that are really interesting, first and foremost, burnout. I want to talk about that one because that is not a simple fix. You can't outsource that. You have to actually do the work and overcome it. So if let's say that is the situation that's present with someone you're working with, what are you doing to get them past that? And how long is it going to take too?
Yeah. that is probably one of the most common questions. How long is this going to take? And what I always say is like, I'll create the path for you driving the car.
Like, I don't even have time for this burnout. Just get me through it.
Yeah. Like, I'm already burnt out. I don't have time to add coaching to my plate. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but this is not happening. And so, like I said, like, I'll create the path for you once we're aligned on goal, but you drive the car. I don't know what pace we're going to go because everybody's different. We all move at different paces. Now, typically entrepreneurs tend to move a little bit quicker than most people, which is why I do so well with them in terms of enjoying to work with them and getting results. But when it comes to burnout, everyone's a little different. And here's what I mean by that. For some person, entrepreneur, it might be, we need to integrate some sort of exercise every day, right? Get out of your head. And it might be go for a walk before you start work, go strength train, whatever that is. For another person, they might find that that is not relaxing to them. What's relaxing to them is reading a book. So we need to integrate that. Regardless of what that kind of uniqueness is for entrepreneurs, it's what I call a balance block. So we need to identify a block of time in your schedule that we use for nothing else than to balance you. And I always want to put this caveat out there. Like, I'm not one of those kumbaya coaches that's like, let's meditate. Like, we are going to get results. I always tell people that want to work with me, I'm like, if you don't like to get shit done, I am not the person for you. And that's totally okay. But I like to get results. So if you're someone who's like, I need to go really slow and just not the right fit. But if you're someone who's like, I got to get rid of this burnout and I don't know where to go, like, I have been there personally. That's not only the reason I know how to do it, but that's what I work on with a lot of entrepreneurs. So my toolkit, if you will, is bigger than Craftsman.
I love it. And that, no, it makes complete sense. I'm also, one of the things that has really helped me, because I also have been there. I think a lot of people, everybody listening has been there too. And to some degree, I think we could just put that out there for all entrepreneurs. One of the things I realized was instead of compartmentalizing it and thinking like, okay, this is when I work, this is when I recharge. For me personally, I can't speak to everybody. I'm able to incorporate it in my day. This right here is that balance for me. Like talking to people, hosting this podcast. I absolutely hate the back end. I can't stand posting these episodes, but recording them, amazing. So I sprinkle them throughout my week, and I always know that balance is coming. And that's been a total game changer because in my head, it's just part of what I'm doing.
And I love that you share that. Like, if you can integrate it into your natural. So what I always tell people is I work 4 days a week, and they're like, oh, Monday through Thursday. I don't know, 4 days a week. A couple of weeks ago was July 4th, so I didn't work Thursday, so I worked Friday. But I only work 4 days a week. I decide what those 4 days are because that's how I balance. The other thing is I put my really intense work in the morning because I am like a huge morning person. I will take a meeting at 6:30 and be this energetic. And by the way, I drink decaf. So, but by 2:30 or 3 p.m., I'm like, oh, this is not when you're going to get my best. And I always want to give my best. So to your point, it's like if having a conversation with people over your podcast is energizing for you, that's how we balance you, right? It doesn't have to mean that you're away from your desk or you're reading a book or whatever the case may be. That's why it becomes so important to be 100% personalized in the approach to the client that you're working with, because we're all so different.
Yeah, I honestly have never let someone on this show who's going to come and prescribe some sort of routine that works for everyone, because it's just not true.
Yeah, it's not.
I thought we got along up until this point. And then you said decaf. Like, what is,
I know.
Do people drink decaf? I'm a little bit concerned, but that's.
So not only do they drink decaf, but I am such a coffee person. My last company was named Dekaf Digital with a K. Like,
so then why decaf? If you seem like a coffee addict then. I mean, if anyone's going to drink regular, it should be you, right?
You would think so. But two reasons. One, in like 2012, I read this article about someone who like totally true article, died in the UK from drinking too much caffeine. And at the time I was drinking like 12 Starbucks grandes a day.
Okay. That's a lot.
Okay. So I was like, and I am very black and white. I was like, I'm going to go cold turkey, which I did. And yes, the headaches are real, but I was like, I miss the taste of coffee. I miss the smell of the coffee beans. So I still love it, but I like to keep my body as balanced as I can. And I have no control over how much I drink. So if it's not decaf, I'm either going to have a heart attack and die, or I'm going to talk so fast that people are going to be like, what is she saying? So it's just a way to balance.
No, I love it. I'm right there with you. Cheers to coffee.
And in an ember, because I drink slow, so it charges it as I go, keeps it warm.
I like that. We also got a hint of how much Adriana makes, because she said she drinks 12 lattes a day from Starbucks. So she makes $6 million a year minimum to afford just the Starbucks coffee. We have a couple of minutes left. I want to talk about the other piece too, because the burnout is super important. Like we can all acknowledge that is real. It is there. If you've been through it, first of all, we both feel for you. And there is another side. But the flip side to that, the other fear that at least is presented a lot when we consult with people, is the employees, and that fear of saying like, okay, I have this team in place, but I really run them. Like, I'm not a business owner. I'm more of a manager. Mm-hmm. What's the process you take people through? I understand the goal setting, but how do you really transition them from saying you're not a manager, your role is to be the owner, and even before that, to be the CEO and lead people? How do we take them through that transition?
So it's interesting. In that case, the business owns you. You don't own it, right? Yeah. So the business is running you. And we have to flip your mindset as one of them to you to understand that you run the business shouldn't run you. The employee question is a really difficult one, because everyone creates a different culture for their organization. That's one of the beauties of being an entrepreneur, is like, I get to decide how we take care of people and what benefits we offer and all of that. But what I find most is the entrepreneur is stuck operating, right? Like, they're stuck in that operational mode. And what they don't realize is it was their vision that actually created an entrepreneurial experience for them and has created this business. And so if you disconnect from that vision because you're so busy working in the business that you don't work on the business, you're never going to get the type of success that you're hoping for, whether that's through leadership success or financial or whatever the case may be. And so it's really reconnecting with the vision you had and creating a plan to align to that. I will say, some entrepreneurs are amazing operators, and their vision was simply, hey, an opportunity came up and I went into that. And so the first thing you have to decide is, which one are you? Are you a visionary or are you an operator? Because that really determines how we grow you, right? If I'm an operator, and yes, I had a vision, but that's not really what I love doing or where I'm specialized, then creating that culture and leading the team might be what fills your cup. So then the question becomes, well, let's find someone who can take this to the next level that is a visionary. So it's really finding that kind of balance on, what are you really good at as an entrepreneur? Where do you want to spend your time? And how do we supplement that to either get you out of the day-to-day or get someone else to come in and do the visionary if that's not your expertise?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they approach that conversation with some level of shame or regret, saying like, I started the business, I should be the visionary. It's none of those things are present. It's power. Once you know which direction to go and who you really are, it's power to actually grow your business and make better decisions. So I love that you separated out into those two ways. This has been a fascinating episode. I love this conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and maybe hire you if they're in that point where they need a little bit of help?
Yeah, they can go to BeBoldExecutiveCoaching.com. That's our website. And then you can find us on LinkedIn or Meta. And then you can always find me on LinkedIn under Adriana L. Cowdin.
I love it. This is awesome. So one more question before I let you go. It's how I love to end these episodes. We believe at What If, powerful questions get powerful answers. That's why there's a obnoxious lit up question mark behind me. But it's a question from you to the audience. So we're talking about these inflection points, right? These plotting your path, figuring out where you're going to go with your business. Let's say someone listening is in that very point. What is a powerful question you want them to ask themselves so that they can get a more clear picture of where their future needs to be?
More so than a question, it's a little bit of an exercise, if that's okay.
I love it. I'm open to it. Let's do it.
It is, write down 10 things you want to accomplish in the next 12 months using the present tense. So I own a multi-million-dollar business, for example, as opposed to I am going to own, right? So in the present tense. And then pretend you have a magic wand and you wave that wand over only one goal that you can have come real in the next 24 hours. First of all, that goal usually just jumps off the page for you. Second of all, that's where you put your energy, is into achieving that goal. And I am always amazed at what that goal is for people. It's so different than what most people think it's going to be.
That's so awesome. That's a cool exercise.
Yeah.
I was just kind of going through it in my head as you were talking, and I buy 12 Starbucks lattes a day. That's my big goal. If I'm making that kind of money, I'm winning. Adriana, thank you so much for being here. This was too much fun.
This was great. Thank you so much.
For those of you watching, listening, wherever you are, BeBoldExecutiveCoaching.com. It's down in the show notes below. So go ahead, check out Adriana over there, and make sure you subscribe. We love putting these episodes on 5 days a week because we're a little cuckoo, but we want to help you grow your business, get outside that box, and build a harmonious business and life. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for being here.